Welcome back. We are learning more this morning about the victims of yesterday's horrific shooting at a Pittsburgh synagogue that left 11 people dead, their ages ranging from 54 years old to 97. Among the lost, a pair of brothers, a husband and wife. This as the FBI releases new details of the suspected shooter, whose social media postings were reportedly full of anti-Semitic rants. He's facing 29 federal counts, 22 of which carry the potential of the death penalty. He's expected to make his court appearance before a judge tomorrow. The horror in Pittsburgh coming on the heels of Friday's arrest of a Florida man in connection to a string of mail bombs sent to prominent Democrats, including the Obamas and the Clintons. My next guest joins me in an exclusive interview right now. He is Senator Ron Johnson, the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. He also sits on the Foreign Relations, Budget and Commerce Committees. Sir, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for weighing in for us.
Good morning, Maria.
From a Homeland Security standpoint, what are your takeaways from what took place in Pittsburgh yesterday?
Well, you know, Department of Homeland Security had apparently already consulted with the synagogue, and they actually had plans in place for exit in case a tragedy like this were to occur. It's sick that people have to plan for these things, but there is a fair amount of consulting that occurs there. But like Congressman Radcliffe mentioned earlier, this really does point out how effective and how brave our law enforcement is in terms of the bomb suspect, how quickly that person was apprehended. And in this case, again, law enforcement rushing into a synagogue, putting themselves in danger. I think 4 law enforcement officers were injured in that. We need to celebrate these individuals. We need to certainly thank them for their service and sacrifice, not denigrate them.
Yeah, very, very important. I want to ask you about the Caravan. The president is asking the Congress to close the loopholes that cause these people to come into the country illegally. Once they get in and claim credible fear, 80% of them, that's 8 out of 10, will lose their case because they are presenting fraudulent claims, according to Tom Homeland from formerly of ICE. Your take on what the U.S. should do with these caravans headed to the border?
I completely agree with the president. We need to change the laws. We have to close these loopholes. We need better barriers. There's no doubt about it. But the fact of the matter is we reward people for coming to this country illegally, because if they get in here, they're able to stay. And listen, as troublesome as these caravans are, the fact of the matter is, Maria, on an average day last year, 1,400 individuals came to this country illegally between the borders. Another 500 presented themselves at the port of entries. And again, we're having to deal with these folks. And the broken legal immigration system we have right now is prompting this. So we have lengthened adjudication process. We have an almost unending appeals process. And, of course, one of the ways we're handling this backlog of cases is we just simply grant administrative closures to the tune of close to 900 per day last year, although Attorney General Sessions stopped that administrative closures. But, no, this is a terrible situation. The main problem is literally our laws, bad court decisions, bad court precedents that incentivize people to come to this country illegally. We need to end that. I'm working on a bill called the Families Act through my committee that would hopefully address the inability to enforce our laws without separating families. Hopefully we can get agreement from Democrats. Nobody wants to separate families. Hopefully Democrats want to secure the borders, but I have my doubts because their solution literally is sanctuary cities, open borders, catch and release, and abolishing ICE.
But I understand that, but why haven't these laws been changed? I mean, the Republicans have been in the majority for the last 2 years. Why haven't we seen any movement on our immigration laws?
Because Democrats want comprehensive reform that literally creates more of these incentives. They're really not interested in closing these incentives. They just want to take a look and listen. I would love to solve the problem of the dreamers, but they won't work with us to actually enforce the laws and these incentives, stop the endless appeals. So, again, we have not been able to come together. My own personal preference was let's just take a look at one of these problems, the family separation issue, and let's fix that one. I'm trying to do that with my committee. Rather than comprehensive immigration reform, which, quite honestly, the last time the Senate passed that, it included $260 billion of welfare benefits for non-U.S. citizens. I call that an enormous incentive for further illegal immigration, which is why I voted against it. So let's start this process step by step, try and find the areas of agreement. It's one thing that as a business person I'm always trying to do. Try and find the areas of agreement. Don't worry about the areas of disagreement. Find the areas of agreement and then try and fix these problems step by step. One word I'd like to, quite honestly, outlaw in Washington, D.C. is comprehensive. We do a terrible job of it.
Yeah.
You know, Maria, one of the things I've done, we've held almost 30 hearings on some aspect of border security.
Okay.
Frequently, when I start out those hearings, I list the laws that we passed to fix this problem. And then, as I list the law dating back to the mid-'80s, I talk about the number of people in this country illegally, and it goes from 3.5 million to 6 to 9 to 10 to 11 to 12. We pass all these laws. It says we're going to fix them, but we never do because there's not a very good problem-solving process inside Congress. We need to start solving these problems. But you have to look at the reality situation. We just ignore the reality.
What's the answer to the families separating in terms of changing that law? And which law do you think is the most onerous that needs to go? What's the worst one that you can just communicate to viewers?
Well, right now it is the reinterpretation of the Flores settlement that forces ICE to no longer detain children past 20 days, even if they're in a family unit. And so that is why when we tried to enforce the laws and we separated the children, obviously that was a huge outcry. But that's the first thing. We need to come to agreement on how to actually fix the Flores settlement so that we can detain families and their children together and then adjudicate their claim rapidly so that we can send them home. Michael Chertoff faced a surge of illegal immigrants from Brazil. He established a rapid removal process, sent them back to Brazil. The next year, we went from 33,000 people coming in from Brazil to the following year, 1,700. We need consequences. We can't reward people for coming in this country illegally. And right now, because of it, we incentivize families to come in, we incentivize unaccompanied children, and so we've had a huge surge of both those types of illegal immigrants.
Right, because people do what you inspect, not what you expect. And, Mr. Chairman, I want to get your take on some of the other big, important issues going on, like this fight we are having with China and the vulnerability of our data, our cyber positioning right now. I had the opportunity to catch up with Larry Ellison this week on Fox Business, the chairman of Oracle. And, of course, Oracle is home to most, 90% of the world's large companies' data. So he is incredibly informed in terms of our positioning in cyber as a country. Here's what he said about the vulnerability of the U.S.'s cyber material.
Modern cloud is constantly under attack by what are called botnets. Some are state actors, some are just cyber criminals. And we're building modern robotic defenses to protect our customers' data.
What do they want? And who are the bad actors?
There are two classes. There are people who want to steal a lot of credit cards and just make money. And then there are state actors who want to gain intelligence. A government agency that basically the Ministry for Personnel in the United States was hacked by a government actor who was able to get all of the resumes for everyone in the White House, all of the Office of Personnel Management is called. The state actor took all of that information, and they were able to analyze it. And they, for example, they did something very clever. They said, oh, these are all the people that work for the government. These are all the people that work at this embassy in our capital city. How come there are some people that work in the embassy in the capital city that aren't in the list of government employees? Maybe they all work for CIA. I think we live in a democracy. If I don't like our government, I can vote for somebody else. We have a choice.
That's the way it works.
We can pick a very progressive government. We had a very progressive government under Barack Obama. When Barack Obama was president of the United States, I'm still on Team USA. That's my team. I think it's wonderful to see the U.S. economy growing again over 4%. I think our big competitor is China, and that if we let China's economy pass us up, if we let China produce more engineers than we do, if we let China's technology companies beat our technology companies, it won't be long that our military is behind technologically also.
A lot to go through there, Senator. Your thoughts first on the vulnerability of our cyber. I thought Larry Ellison did a good job of connecting the dots of that breach of the Office of Personnel.
You've hit on just another enormously complex problem here. We had our annual threat hearing 2 weeks ago with the head of DHS and Director Wray and the head of the National Counterterrorism Center. And the two big threats they're talking about is homegrown violent extremists. We just witnessed that, and then cyber. And there's no doubt about it that we are incredibly vulnerable. And the federal government, I think a recent GAO report said that the federal government, through its own internal cyber defenses, only detects about 2.5% of incidents. So we're woefully unprepared, and we're not very effective at this. We just saw healthcare.gov got hacked, and I think about 80-some thousand individuals' personal information was obtained again. So, no, this is a huge problem. My own thoughts is that public exposure and disclosure is probably the best line of defense. People need to be aware of the fact that we've had so many high-profile cyber attacks certainly has energized the private sectors to begin to really start ramping up their cyber defenses. And we have these information sharing groups, I think, within the financial services, probably one of the better ones. I really do think we need a private sector model because they're going to be far more nimble than anything the federal government can do. But we need the federal government involved in terms of information sharing as well.
Yeah.
But, for example, Kaspersky's Labs, our intelligence community knew about this for years, didn't tell anybody. And so we allowed Kaspersky Labs to become this enormous company, have their software in most personal computers on security. It's an absurd situation. We've seen this report from Bloomberg. I don't know if it's true or not. Director Wray said be careful with it, but potentially some chips being installed in some of these computer boards. Again, the awareness at least makes companies do their own certification process and better testing to make sure they're not vulnerable. But we need better supply chain management. But public awareness, I think, is probably the most important thing. Mandiant issued a report about the PLA out of they have their own little cyber group out of China there in 2014, and that led to at least, I think, a lessening of China's bad acting in here. But let's face it, China has been stealing hundreds of billions of dollars worth of our industrial secrets as well as our military secrets. And that is really, I think, one of the biggest threat we face in terms of our relationship with China.
So how long will this fight go on? And what are the implications if we continue pushing back on China? What are the implications for the economy, for people? Because we know that they've been stealing for all of these years, but they won't admit it. Are tariffs the answer here to get them to behave differently?
Well, our vulnerability to cyber attacks is going to go on as long as people use computers. I tell young people, if you want to, job security, get a degree in cybersecurity. So again, I think the good news is because of public awareness, the gap between those on offense and those of us on defense is quite honestly narrowing. And I think this administration, I think appropriately, is studying the fact of potentially going on offense ourselves as part of the deterrence. But again, it's the public exposure that hopefully, if we have a unified rest of the world when it comes to trade and our dealings with China, will discipline them to begin really adhering to the norms of the rest of the world trading system.
Well, I also think it's interesting to note that, Ellison also commented on the Department of Defense contract that Oracle's trying to get. Amazon wants to get the business with the Pentagon as well. Meanwhile, Google walked away, but they're fine going into China and having their search engine censored. Real quick.
Well, again, that's a decision I guess Google's going to make. The Chinese market, 1.4 billion person market, is very attractive, which is why a lot of U.S. businesses go over there and willingly give up their IP as well.
Right.
So this is an incredibly complex situation here. We do need to be aware of the vulnerabilities that we have, whether it's cyber crime or whether it's cyber theft, industrial espionage, possibly going up to cyber warfare, which is the highest threat level.
Congressman, Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much. We will see you soon.